We continue our series of sermons and worships on Jesus' healings in the New Testament. But before we start, I want to thank Reverend Laura and Elder Connie and everyone behind the scenes for pulling this service together on night from Thursday to Friday. I felt quite ill, and Friday was probably the toughest day. Since then, I feel much better, and I'm ready to preach. Thank you for leading and organizing the worship this lovely way. So here we are with this biblical story from Mark 3. And in the Bible, there are many references to God who is full of wrath. And they are problematic because of them being used and abused by so many demagogues and charlatans over the history of the church. But in this story, this is the only instance in the entire Bible when we hear that Jesus himself got angry. There are few other situations when he shows negative emotions, and we talked about it some time ago, for instance, cursing a tree. But never it is named like here. Here we are directly told that Jesus got angry. And it is the only time in the entire Bible. And it was clearly shocking and somehow problematic. From the earliest of times, even as the Gospels were written, other synoptical Gospels, Matthew and Luke, took over this story but completely eliminated any mention of anger from their Gospels. I must say that I am thankful to Mark that he preserved it. I'm thankful because for me, this passionate, even angry Jesus is a real, believable Jesus. This story can show us what Jesus was passionate about, what triggered him, what is God passionate about, and how we should understand divine wrath whenever it is mentioned throughout the Bible. But first, what we need to do is we need to put what Jesus did, put the issue on the center stage. If you listen, they were very well aware, his opponents, they were very well aware of a man with a withered hand. He probably lived among them for ages. They knew about him. They knew about his suffering. And they did nothing to help him. How much it reminds me of our situation these days. Alex Azar, a Secretary of Health, when he was asked last Sunday why Americans who represent less than 5% of world population, but nearly a third of the known COVID deaths, he responded, and I wrote down his response so I can quote exactly. Quotation: "Unfortunately, America has a very diverse population, and Black Americans and minorities have significant underlying disease." End of quotation. It's difficult to start with this quotation somewhere. Just that, unfortunately, as it was something bad that we were diverse. But he blamed Black Americans and other minorities for dying for a novel virus because they are poor, because the food available and affordable to them is literally a junk food, because their living conditions are bad, because they live in polluted places, because they have difficult access to healthcare, because they have higher degree of badly treated diabetes and uncontrollable blood pressure, because they work unprotected. Yeah, sure. They are just dying to make Trump administration to look bad. And all of those issues have been with us for years. Did Alex Azar think that we are that short memory? When was it when we fought them on the streets to preserve at least some health insurance for the most vulnerable, doing die-ins on the corner of Central Park in front of Trump Hotel? Our reality is actually worse than what happened there in the biblical story. Over there, they knew about a poor sufferer. They did nothing. Maybe they used him as a bite for Jesus. In our situation, just think about it. The Secretary of Health of this wealthy nation, with all the resources available to him, is blaming the sick and the dead. And after Jesus got a man to the center, he asked a simple question. Is it legal to do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill? And they were silent. That is when Jesus looked at them with anger, upset by their callous hearts. I remember well when I preached on this biblical text for the first time in Prague about 25 years ago, and how I struggled to come up with a lively and persuasive, non-artificial illustration of this, what the callous hearts mean today. And here we are. Recent days provide ample illustrations of callous hearts. Originally, I wanted to point at those open state movements with their irregular guerrillas armed to their teeth and occupying state houses with their almost fascist agendas. I wanted to preach about culture wars, about wearing, actually not wearing face masks. I wanted to mention the heartless notion of sacrificing our elderly and most vulnerable on behalf of the economy. All would be fitting illustrations for the callous hearts. Little did I know that this Friday evening, Mr. Trump would offer even better, of course, in quotation marks, better illustration, when he absolutely unconstitutionally ordered state governors to open all places of worship. Unconstitutional because he has no position to command governors, and government should not have any say in matters of faith. We hear that all the time, that we should not meddle in politics, while evangelicals do that all the time. And here we have government trying to intervene how we worship. But it is unacceptable also morally and theologically. I could hardly think of more fitting illustration what was happening in the New Testament and what made Jesus so angry. Taking something holy, something good, taking back then the gift of Sabbath, a gift of rest and worship. In our times, taking our desire to worship and turning it into a death trap for the sake of political or ideological agendas. When I heard for the first time that Trump was a leader of that cult, I thought it was an exaggeration. Friends, I don't think it anymore. Thankfully, we now know this story from the Bible, and we have examples how to turn our anger into an healing power. We need to put the vulnerable in the center, call out the priests of death, and start building fair society. And with something like this, I wanted to finish and then go into our affirmation of faith. But overnight, I was thinking about it a little further, and I make some notes. I reached for them here. We do not need to reopen our church because we never closed. Since mid-March, we were more open and active than ever. I was saying that we are on lockdown, and I haven't been working that much ever before. Our worship is essential, and we transfer it into internet almost seamlessly. Our speaking truth to power is essential, and our Peace and Social Justice Network continues to do so. Our Sunday school and Christian education is essential, and it has been transferred there as well and is well known around. Our work of caring for lonely and vulnerable is essential, and our deacons started to meet 8 times more often. Our care for hard-hit and disadvantaged is essential, and so the session created a fund to alleviate hardships and made it available to all members and friends. Our work with refugees is essential, and it is still going on. It did not stop. Feeding our neighbors in need is essential, and our Thursday meal never stopped. Our caring for our employees is essential, and so we help each and everyone to figure out which arrangement would be best, and that they will be welcome back. Our community programs are essential, and they continue by electronic means. The same is true about our Boy Scouts. They are essential, and they continue meeting. Our support for young people in Vera Roberts Endowment is essential, and it continues to support their education. Our outreach with healthy food is essential, and so our CSA program continues. Our work of the church is essential in our continuous prayers for just, loving, and peaceful world for everyone and everywhere. Rutgers Church does not need to open because our church never closed. We love God and our neighbors and ourselves so much that we can live and serve as community without meeting in person until it is safe. We are the church, and no dark priests of death would ever tell us what to do. Amen.